One.
Hey, Stu.
Hey, Tom.
This is the Stu Smith Fitness Report, Volume 2, second podcast. Subject is to and through. It is 0 dark 30 out here in Arizona, and I am no longer a bodiless head, Stu. I now have a light background, and you can see, because as you know, I always wear black. You can now see I actually have shoulders.
There you go. You know, I like the black on black look. The floating head was, I think, a classic for our first podcast.
I think it is, man. And unfortunately, because it's a uniform for me, it's going to be kind of everlasting. All right, buddy, to and through. So you have an email here that you answered a number of weeks ago in your columns, but I'm going to read it. And it's about a young man who is training for buds and wants to understand better how to mix in weightlifting with calisthenics. So here we go. Stu, I've been watching some YouTube videos showing active duty spec ops guys who are working out, SEALs, Rangers, SF, and others. They're huge and lifting very heavy weights. So I've been lifting more and doing less cardio. Is that okay? I'm preparing for buds. I have about a year left, and I'm trying to gain muscle mass. Your answer was, what I hear is most people wish they had run more and had swum more with fins. And I would say, based on my training with you, run more with pants and boots, with toes first in the sand.
Well, yes. I mean, you know, if you know you are going to buds and you have a year, then you have to specifically train to get through that training, right? And some of that may require some lifting weights. It kind of depends on your athletic background, right? If you need to put on some muscle mass, you know, it might help you to eat more, lift more. You know, you can still put on muscle mass even with calisthenics. You just have to eat a lot more. You know, you could gain weight with a marathon, but you got to eat a lot more, right? A whole lot more, right? But here's the deal. You know, the topic of this podcast is making it to and through training, right? And if you think about it, there's 3 phases of tactical fitness. It's getting to the training, right? And that usually means passing a fitness test. It might mean weight loss to meet height weight standards. It is getting through the training, which requires you to get a little more specific with your training to what branch of service you're going to, or law enforcement or firefighter type training you're going to do. And then once you're an active duty operator in military, law enforcement, firefighter, the tactical professions, it's all about maintenance and recovery so you can have longevity in your job. So those are the 3 phases of fitness. And where he is right now, he's kind of in that through mode. He probably hasn't been fully accepted into the program. So right now, you know, if you haven't been accepted into the program and you know you have a year to train, your number one priority is to get to the training, right? And that means you have to master that fitness test, which is pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, a 500-yard swim, and a 1.5-mile run. Not in that order, but that's what you have to do. And if your workouts aren't looking like that, chances are you are not really preparing yourself to get to the training optimally.
Yeah, and you know what, Stu? We should spend a podcast on the subject of periodization, which is, he has a year, and I'm going to guess that you're going to say even within that year, he should periodize that, or I don't even know if that's the right word. And here I am, a professor at Columbia, but he needs to put that together for himself in a very specific way. And one of the things I've learned from you over the years is having a specific process you use to take the best advantage of that time and maximize the results without causing damage to yourself in the process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, with a full year, absolutely. You should have a cycle of lifting in there, have a cycle of, you know, high volume running and swimming and calisthenics. When you got plenty of time to throw in 3 or 4 good cycles of training that specifically focus on some of the needs that you have to make that transition from your average athlete to the tactical athlete. Because here's the problem. He's probably just looking at, his question, if he needs to put on muscle mass, I'm hoping he's an endurance athlete where the running comes easy or the swimming comes easy. And now he's just trying to put on mass and strength to take some of those weaknesses that the typical endurance athlete have and move it into the more, moderate strength zone, right? Because as a tactical athlete, you have to be good at everything, like we discussed in podcast number 1. You can't be great at one thing and crappy at others. You have to be good at everything. So that means running, swimming, high rep calisthenics, muscle stamina, strength, power, speed, agility, flexibility, mobility. All of those things come into play when you are preparing that periodization program over the year. And you're right. We need to make a full podcast with PowerPoints and showing you how the bell curve of the year goes, and really talk about periodization. But yes, to answer this guy's question specifically, yes, if you need to put on muscle mass, do a weightlifting cycle. But chances are you're probably not going to gain a lot of muscle mass if you are also running at a high volume and swimming at a high volume. So when I lift weights and when I'm coaching my young guys who need to train to put on muscle mass during our weightlifting cycle, we actually decrease our cardio a little bit. As far as long distance, we still focus on very fast-paced running and very fast-paced swimming, but we're not trying to go out and do 10-mile runs, and eat up, all the gains we had in the weight room. So it's all about speed, really. And, when I was a young transitioning athlete from a powerlifting football stage, anything over 100 yards was long distance. So I had to transition to where 1.5 miles now is short enough distance to where I can put out at a very high level of activity and heart rate and be able to think of that as it's not long distance. It's more of a, intermediate sprint.
So Stu, let's come back to this fellow's question for just a second, because he really wants a prescription for what do I do over the next year, because I'm prepping to go to Buds. And so when you look at that question, let's take apart the fact that he said he's trying to lift more, should he lift more, and so forth. If you just took the question generically and you had someone who was prepping to go to Buds, they had 1 year, what would you say to them?
Well, first thing, I would always consider their athletic background. Like, what is their history? Because, if you think about the transition it takes to go from anything in the athletic world to preparing for SEAL training, there is a transition, right? And it can be a year, maybe even 2 years long. I mean, it took me probably 2 years to transition from that powerlifting football player to a solid performing Bud student, right? And that, what I did is I dropped weight training altogether and just started doing triathlon training. I mean, and high rep calisthenics. I was still doing resistance training. It just looked different. It wasn't heavy weights. It was calisthenics. I dropped about 15, 20 pounds, was a lot leaner, was a lot faster, had a lot more endurance, and was able to do it. Now, someone who's coming from the endurance background, a little bit different. He might be able to run a 5-minute mile with ease, because he's a cross-country guy, right? But now he's pretty weak under a pull-up bar and a barbell. So he needs to transition, gaining some mass, working on some strength. He's not going to lose a whole lot of his running performance, especially compared with everybody else on that level, because 5-minute miles is world class in SEAL terms on a 4-mile timed run. Nobody runs it in 20 minutes. Nobody runs a 4-mile run in 20 minutes out there. You have until 28 minutes until you fail, right? And sometimes 30 in the first phase. So, I mean, if you can run 6:30 minute mile, or even a 6-minute mile, and get between 24 and 26, you're going to be in the top 5% of a buds class. So he can let his performance in running slide a little bit and start lifting weights and maybe put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle mass, right? And the cool thing about being an endurance athlete is you tend to have that foundation with you forever. I mean, I've seen endurance guys, just, hardly run at all for a year and still go do a 6-minute mile, and crush other guys that have been running year round trying to get to a 6-minute mile.
So Stu, just wait until I have to report out later today my fitness scores from last night. Then you'll see that endurance athletes don't always carry over. That's a different
talking
subject.
Decades here.
Right. Well, thanks, buddy. Thanks. All right.
You do a couple of years off of running, to try to lift more, you're still going to be a good runner because your mechanics are perfect, right? And you probably run very efficiently. Same for swimmers. Swimmers are phenomenal underwater. They typically have a problem transitioning to anything with gravity, right? So if they're lifting weights or they're running, they tend to get a lot of stress fractures, tendonitis, because they've been used to working their muscles in zero gravity. And then when the impact of running, rucking under a log, under a boat hits them, everything starts hurting. So that transition takes a while too. So we all have a transition, and we all have weaknesses. And I'm just saying you have to be mature enough before you go into this type of training to say, you know what? My athletic background does not fully answer the demands of my future training. I need to reach in and figure out, where my weaknesses are and go from there.
Stu, so let's move now to preparing for the duration. So this is the period between the two and the through. Now you're in there. How do you make sure that you can survive it, right? Because
now we're talking through the training.
Right.
So
because it's one thing to get there.
Here's how this guy's life's going to look. This guy's life's going to look like this. He's going to spend the next 5 or 6 months, taking fitness tests with the SEAL mentor and the recruiters to get into buds. He passes. He gets into the draft. He makes it into buds. He now has a date. It's 6 months away. So now he spends that time focusing on getting through the training. And that requires this guy to focus on the specifics of buds training. That means no more 1.5 mile timed runs, because that's over with, right? Now it's 4 mile timed runs. It's 2 mile ocean swims with fins. Every week you'll take that. It's obstacle courses. It's rucking. It's, high rep PT on the grinder. Get used to doing sit-ups on concrete, because that's what you're going to be doing. So it's all these little specifics that you're going to have to get used to. One of the other things too, which may require some weights to simulate, is getting used to getting under a log, right? Or
IBS.
Under the boat. So what we do is we make sandbags, about 40, 50-pound sandbags. Go to Home Depot, get yourself a 50-pound bag of sand for $4. Take out about 5-10 pounds, roll it up, duct tape the hell out of it, and now you got a sand baby, we call it, right? You can carry that thing on your head, walk around, kind of simulates what it feels like to have an IBS on your head, right? You can carry it.
Sometimes people have a bad habit of filling those things with water and getting inside them. It's really a bad experience.
Right. And then if you do a Google search on the Sand Baby Murph, right, it's kind of a log PT simulation workout where you do squats with it on your shoulder, you do chest carry lunges, you do a lot of overhead push press with that Sand Baby. And it's a really good way to simulate log PT, because if you have a 200-pound log spread out between 5-6 people, you're probably going to be lifting about 40 pounds each, right? So you just have to do it well as a team. And so, these little sand babies is a good way to at least get your, shoulder muscles, your back muscles, your spine prepared for that weight that's going to be on it.
That's a great idea, Stu. I haven't heard that one yet. Post-training. So now let's turn to, what do you do after all this?
All right. So now this guy's question, and this happens all the time. You see this video of active SEALs and Rangers and SF guys carrying all their gear and looking buff, lifting weights. They have weight room workouts, and they're getting strong, because that's what they need to do. After this type of training, you need to rebuild yourself, right?
Mhm.
That's one thing I did when I was 27 years old, and why I created my periodization program is I broke. And the first thing I did is I went back to the weight room and rebuilt myself because I was broken, right? So you go back into the weight room, you get stronger, you get faster, all the, high miles of running and high miles of swimming aren't quite as necessary, in your job. There may be some missions where you're going to swim, or you may be some missions where you're going to have to ruck in, right? But 9 times out of 10, you're going to jump off a helicopter, run up a flight of steps, do your business, run back into a helicopter. So the workouts kind of change for your mission scenarios that you're about to do, right? And you'll know those well in advance. So that's why a lot of these guys are in the weight room getting stronger, getting bigger, getting faster, maybe lose a little bit of endurance when they do that, but they still have a good enough base of endurance where if they had to go run 5-6 miles, they could go do it. Might not be the fastest they've ever done, but they would still be able to muscle through it.
Stu, spend a second and talk a little bit about your experience. I just happen to know a little bit about your BUD/S experience. Go through your personal BUD/S experience, and then talk a little bit about when you went to jump school and the result of the training that you had to experience there, where you kind of almost atrophied at jump school because the PT wasn't hard enough for the SEAL teams. And how you have to figure out how to do it. Now you're through, but you're now into that post-training mode.
Yeah, you're at BUD/S, and actually, when we were at BUD/S, the training just kept getting harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in, now they actually have strength coaches that are there. So instead of a, super fit master chief who's running the PT for you, right, and just crushing everybody, right? Which is, there's some good and bad in that. I mean, there's a lot of mental toughness that goes into maintaining these type of workouts, but unfortunately, there's a lot of injuries that go with it. Now we actually have smart, collegiate, Olympian type power lifting trainers and strength coaches that help, rebuild the tactical athlete, especially Rangers, SF, SEALs have them. Special forces guys, and there's a lot of the regular military is starting to catch hold of it too, and hire these guys. Police departments have them, especially federal police departments, and sometimes firefighters will have them per county, where they help try to set things up. So getting a lot smarter than when it was when I was there. So when I was there, I spent all my life working out, being an athlete in high school and college. And then I went to BUD/S and beat myself up there. And then I went to the teams and continued to beat myself up there. And then by 27, I was literally broken, right? And I had to create a new program. And I created my periodization program that I've been doing 20 years now. And in fact, the year I met you was the first year that I had started doing that.
It, yeah.
And so anyway, it took me about 4 or 5 years to perfect it and get it all taken care of, but I've been using it as a teaching tool for years. In fact, if you Google Stu Smith periodization, you'll see a dozen articles out there about it. And I have several books that just focus on, the periodization theory of, every quarter has a cycle that you focus on elements of tactical fitness. But yeah, it's so much smarter now than it was then. And the thing that they've realized is that the job is stressful. You don't need to be pounding your body as hard as you did to get to and through the training. Now it's about actively pursuing recovery, maintenance, so you have a good cycle of longevity, be able to do your career for as long as you want.
So summarize this for us, Stu. You've got somebody who's got a year to get to, then he's going to be going through, and then he's got the post training. So give me a 2-minute summary of all right.
Yeah, real quick. The summary is tactical fitness is this. You have to get to the training in order to get through the training. And once you get through the training, you have to be able to maintain a certain level of fitness and ability to be able to do your job, right? That's what tactical fitness is. And there's 3 phases of tactical fitness. A lot of people just focus on the last one, or they focus on the middle one, right? And they really kind of forget about the 2. Making it 2 is a huge transition. You know, you could be transitioning from an endurance athlete and need to put on some strength. You could be transitioning from a strength and power athlete, need to put on some endurance, right? Or you could actually be someone who's been sedentary throughout their teens and say, you know what, I need to do something with my life and lose 80 pounds and go serve my country. I've seen hundreds of those guys come through. And I tell you what, that's a rewarding feeling to be able to help somebody lose 80 pounds and get their dream job of what they want to do. You know, I would be honest with you, I like to do that even more than help, you know, a guy go from 15 pull-ups to 25 pull-ups and get a SEAL billet. You know, they're both equally rewarding, but to change somebody's life, you know, to go from 80 pounds heavy to, you know, a tactical athlete, you know, that's a transition. You're not going to do it in a week. You're not going to do it in a month. It takes a year, sometimes 2 years to make that transition, but you put in the time and the will, and you can easily become a tactical athlete and get one of these wonderful jobs where you serve your country, your community, you save lives. And, you know, that's what tactical fitness is.
And you know what, Stu, we'll come back to the issue of weight in another podcast, because one of the things you've said to me for, I don't even know how many years now, but it's been almost a constant theme of people coming to you or asking you about wanting to serve in many capacities, but having a weight issue that they're dealing with, and knowing that they cannot do what they need to do having as much weight as they have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be able to discuss a little bit. I tell you, half of my emails that I get, you know, when people email me at stu@stusmith.com, they email me questions. 50% of them are people who need to lose weight in order to serve their country or community. So that's just a sign of the times.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we're going to deal with another issue in another podcast soon on this issue of something you've been focusing me on, which is 1,000 calories.
Yeah, we're going to focus on 1,000 calories in and 1,000 calories out.
For me, the harder issue, Stu, is the 1,000 calories out, although I did finally hit it again last night. But
nice.
But look, so what would you like people to do to get involved here, Stu?
All right, well, there's a couple things. Check out my website, stu@stusmith.com. Oh, I got another one, too, that's kind of a mirror image of that, stusmithfitness.com. One's more of a store, another one's more of an information site. But latest book that I've created is called Tactical Strength. In fact, I have it right here. I don't know if you guys can see it. Tactical Strength.
There we go.
So brand new book. It's for this guy, it'd be perfect for him because he needs to go through a strength cycle. And that's what this is. This is my winter strength cycle that I've been doing for 20 years that allows me to pick up strength, old 1-rep maxes and squats and deadlifts and bench and power cleans, you know, all those great lifts. And then, you know, we come around to the spring and start ramping up our running again. So it's a little periodization preview of a future podcast.
That's awesome, Stu. Thanks much, buddy. It's good to see you.
All right, man. And you too. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time, folks.